Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming on short notice. But I did think that this case in particular was of particular interest to our community and our police service and our frontline officers, which I believe strongly are unified in their support for our current practices of street checks. So I'm going to give you some facts surrounding this firearm in front of you, and then I will take questions. So again, good afternoon. I want to share with you a sobering example of why the Windsor Police Service, the Windsor Police Service Board, and many members of our community have serious concerns with the Government of Ontario's proposed carding legislation. Early this morning, at approximately 1:15 a.m., Windsor police officers on routine patrol observed two males walking the area of Richmond and Walker Road. They were walking in a residential area and appeared suspicious to the officers. Officers approached the males to speak with them. The males told police they were heading to Mac's Milk. One of them began acting very nervously by reaching into his sweater pocket several times, despite being asked to keep his hands visible for officer safety reasons. The male also began to shake as he removed his hand from his pocket. It was at this time that a police officer observed a handgun in the same pocket, which was later determined to be loaded. Officers then had grounds to place the male under arrest, which occurred without incident, and seized the firearm. Subject to searching the male, officers discovered additional rounds of ammunition for the firearm, as well as 8 grams of cocaine. The firearm was determined to be a .32 caliber Hopkins and Allen revolver, which you see here before you. Charged is Omar Muhammad, 21 years of age, of London, Ontario, charged with the following offenses: possession of cocaine for the purpose of trafficking, carrying a concealed firearm, possession of a firearm while prohibited, possession of ammunition while prohibited, and careless storage of a firearm. This type of interaction is typical of our commitment to community safety. This is the anatomy of a street check. These are expectations that the community should have of the police. These two officers removed a loaded firearm from the street. Our officers are acutely aware of the violence and devastation associated to guns and drugs in our community. We have witnessed the tragic consequences of gun violence in our community. My concerns are shared by many in this community and across the province, that our fears for community safety are real under the proposed legislation change. Under proposed government legislation, our initial contact with these males would have been, you don't have to talk to us if you don't want to, and you can leave at any time. I ask our community, do you honestly think the result in this situation would have been the same? This street check resulted in the removal of a handgun and drugs from our community because of the proactive and proper work of our officers under the current scope of legislation. This is an example of the type of interaction our community expects and demands from their police service. This interaction resulted in the removal of a handgun. Call it interaction, street check, or carding. These officers were fully engaged in their sworn duty to protect the community. There are certain parameters officers must fulfill if grounds to arrest and lawfully detain do not exist. Neither of the above existed in this circumstances. This was proactive community-based policing. There is a flaw in the proposed legislation, and as a result, community safety will be compromised. We conduct ourselves on principles of transparency and law and order to build and maintain community trust. Mechanisms exist to address any improper conduct of our officers, including racial profiling, which clearly this was not. When the government began to look at carding, they indicated they would consult with police across the province. Despite our invitation to share our successes, the Windsor Police Service and the Windsor community was never consulted. In 2014, our officers conducted 953 street checks in our community. Our drugs and guns unit has executed 66 search warrants in 2015 in the city of Windsor. Of those events, 18 have resulted in information from Streetchecks, a Streetcheck interaction to support the affiant in the search warrant application. Our data further supports that our Streetchecks do not arbitrarily target persons from diverse backgrounds. We fully support many elements in the proposed legislation that address racial profiling and arbitrary and random stops of citizens. Our concerns are specific to the fact police will be required to inform people that they don't have to speak to us and can simply walk away. Thank you. So I'll take questions.
Chief, especially in light of the Paris attacks last Friday, do you think the Association of Chiefs of Police can prevail on the Premier to rethink this policy?
We're hoping so. So that is something that we haven't talked a lot about in this community, but by extension, this is a tool, a very effective tool that police have currently in our community that is such a high threshold that we're not infringing on people's rights. We've proven that through our data. So yes, when we're investigating incidents of terrorism in the future perhaps, this will severely handcuff police officers in their duty of protecting the community.
Is there some complication because federal legislation seems to have been moving in one direction while provincial legislation has moved in another?
There is. There's absolutely. We think that that whole piece of the legality of the regulation changes is something that's going to have to examined as well. But right now we're just talking about the pure merits that it gives to our police officers in our community on its merit alone. The legality of it will be challenged. I'm convinced of that.
And so in terms of that challenge, will that perhaps come from the Chiefs of Police Association? Do you have any sense of where that may originate?
It may. But so right now though, we're hoping for the very best in the next 45 days, and even if they extend that 45-day window for feedback, that they may rethink it and come forward with some changes that we're proposing, so we don't have to go down that road. But it will be the next avenue that's pursued.
Can you talk a little bit about what those changes that you're proposing are?
Yes. So we absolutely agree that any type of stop that is based on a person's race or anything other than criminal profiling is wrong. And our officers are already prohibited by law in those circumstances from stopping someone based on race or anything else. We're hoping that the officers have the right to do exactly what they did last night. Engage when they feel it's suspicious, in suspicious circumstances, and not have to tell the person, you have the right to walk away, you don't have to talk to us if you don't want to. That's outrageous in our view.
Is part of this about the training of officers?
It is. So, in respect of all legislation and all of our duties as police officers, training is critical, and it's ongoing. So we spend 3 months at the Imperial Police College to begin our careers, another 3 months with training officers, and then we have incredibly engaged frontline supervisors that are constantly coaching and mentoring and training our officers to do the right thing in the right circumstances.
Do we know how many carding checks there have been, or checks there have been that have not led to any arrests?
Yes, we do. We have some idea of that. So as you saw there, we had 18 of the 66 search warrants had a street check involvement, and we had of the 333 people that were checked last year in street checks, I think it's 118 or 116 were later charged with a criminal offense in the last 10 months alone. So the percentages of people being identified because of criminal behaviors, it's incredibly high. So the threshold, again, that the legislation demands is high, and our officers are respecting that. And our results are clearly painting that picture.
So are officers trained to look for very specific behavior, or is it just a gut feeling?
Well, it is. It's a little bit of both, I think, but certainly the time of day. So this, for example, let's break it down last night. Residential area, not a lot of foot traffic at 1:30 in the morning. They're both very young. They could have been under the age of 18 years. I think one of them was just 18. And in an area where there was a Max Milk, we've had Max Milk store robberies in the city in the last couple of weeks. So it's all of those things. And the initial conversation is just a conversation until the suspicious nature of the person, the nervousness, the shaking, these observations that the officer makes after he makes the stop, all part and parcel of the total street check. And you know, obviously in this case, he had the most damaging type of firearm, small, very easily to concealed, and just as damaging as any other firearm. And we don't know why it was being used or why it was being carried, but we do know that he had cocaine and was charged with cocaine for the possession of trafficking. So, guns and drugs, that's what we've been saying for many years.
I think one of the concerns, if I recall, about the changes in the carding legislation was for those people that police would stop and had no criminal involvement, that may generate a record or some other sort of adverse situation. Can you address that part of it?
Yes, I agree. I think that was the criticisms that are coming out of other communities, that there were some segments that were feeling they were being unfairly targeted as a result of their race. And quite succinctly, it was because of race. We have not had those complaints here, nor do our statistics tell us that is the case here. So we have 23% of our population is from diverse communities here in Windsor, pursuant to our 2011 census, and 22% of people in our carding data banks were of a diverse nature. So we're almost exactly the same. Anyone else?
That's it.
What was the exact location of where they were picked up?
Yeah, they were picked up at Richmond and Walker Road.
That was 2:30 this morning?
1:30 this morning.
1:30.
Yeah, 1:30 this morning.
Just to clarify the numbers, because I know that we've had a lot of numbers. This is 2015 numbers so far, 953 street checks.
No, so that was all of 2014 was 953 street checks.
150.
In 2015,
Right.
our drugs and gun unit has executed 66 search warrants. And in those 66 search warrants, 18 were used street checks as part of the application to apply for the search warrant.
Okay.
So do you know how many street checks there have been this year?
I know I don't have those numbers. We have tracked around 1,000 for the last 4 or 5 years. So I think in 2013 we had 1,200. In 2014 we had 953.
953.
Chief, what could the public do to register their concern?
Yes, thank you. So the ministry is looking for feedback. And do we have that information, guys, for the ministry?
It is on the Ontario government webpage. If you go there, there's a link at the bottom of the page for people to click on and address any concerns or any feedback, whether positive in support of the legislation or if you're against the legislation. That's available to the public on the Ontario government website.
Thank you.
We can make that available on our website too.
I think that would be good.
Yeah, Facebook page or something.
Yeah, right.
Do you have the proper spelling of his last name?
Yes.
Just to, Chief, sort of interrupt,
Yeah.
just so you know, the proper name of the accused is Omar Mohammed Omar. So this is my error, that I have the wrong surname, so
Can you spell
Omar
it?
Mohammed Omar, so the surname is O-M-A-R.
And
How's
can you
the-
spell the
how's
last
Mohammed
name?
spelled?
M-U-H-A-M-M-A-D.
You're gonna send that out?
It'll be
An
on the
update.
list.
And he's
From
25
London?
years old and from London, was
I
that?
believe he's 21 years of age,
21.
and he is from London, yes.
And he was charged with.
Yes, and so in addition to the charges that the chief has read out, there's also 2 additional charges in relation to court-ordered breaches. And those breaches are in relation to the possession of the ammunition, as well as the possession of the firearm. And all of those charges will be listed out in a release that we're going to make.
At this point, I know it's early on, do we have any history for this weapon? Do you know any of its background?
Jim, anything?
That'll all be part and parcel of a greater investigation, of course. I mean, this is in its preliminary phases, as you know. This arrest was made earlier this morning, so definitely we have people here that will be looking into the background of this particular firearm And there will be attempts to link it, if there's any possibility of doing that, to outstanding crimes within the province of Ontario. And the firearm will be test fired as well. And those rounds will be submitted as well to the Center for Forensic Sciences, where comparisons can be made to those forensically and expertly to see if it's involved in any outstanding crimes as well.
So what happens to the information on the person who wasn't charged?
So he wasn't charged, so I can't disclose that information, but there wasn't two people taken into custody initially.
But typically, if someone was stopped and wasn't charged, what happens to that information? Is there a record of them being stopped?
There would be a record of him being stopped, but it wouldn't be part of his criminal record.
Okay.
Yeah, that's only upon conviction, so, yeah.
Can I catch that box? Can we spin the box around?
We was-
Yeah, just so we can.
It's just, it's part of the evidence now, so we don't
Right.
want to touch it, but, except for Matt, he can touch it.
Yeah.
The,